Yes, hello. Also from my side, my name is Daniel, and I also welcome you to the today's meetup. Thanks, Christine, for organizing. I'm happy that everything works. You can see my screen and hear me. The topic today is, as you can see, the KubeEYE project, which works on a visual landscape designer for Kubernetes. I was asked to give a short overview about the progress and the status of the project. And yeah, I start with some words about project team. It's indeed a very small one. Besides me, it's mainly just two persons. I'm responsible for architecture and development, and my brother Sebastian is the real Kubernetes expert. He knows Kubernetes from his job, and he brings very much good input into this project. And then there's also my wife Ramona. She mainly works on the application design and the usability of the UI. So you can call it some kind of a family project. But now let's start. In the first part of this meetup, I will show you some slides which should tell you about the basic drivers and the ideas behind the KubeEYE project. Then I'll give you a very short overview about the technical concepts. And in the main part, I will demonstrate the current state of the project with our prototype. And if you have then some questions, as Christine said, just write into the chat, and I hope I can answer them afterwards. Yes. Let me start with a short dialogue scene that I often had in my career as a project manager in software projects. On the left side, you see a guy who has a great business idea. He has an application that he wants to bring online, that customers can use it and hopefully pay money for it. And on the right side, you have obviously some guy who has the right resources to do this and deep technical knowledge. And the problem here is that he has many detailed questions, and left side does not understand really the language. So this is a typical situation that we are often facing. And if these two sides are now trying to bring the IT landscape online, they are just trying, failing, trying again, fail again, and so on. The point is that the DevOps revolution and the container technologies that we have today, they give us the option to build up landscapes very quick because we know how to do it, but often we don't even know what to do. And as you can see in this dialogue scene, dev and ops and business and technology are often just lost in translation. In general, there is a solution. There is a general language which everybody understands and brings them together. And this is the power of pictures. Our human brains are much better in understanding and saving pictures than words. And that brings me to my basic statement today. I invite you all to check it out and verify, validate it in your own daily business. You may call it Daniel's Law if you want. In every project in which we build complex landscapes, the moment comes when we start to paint pictures. But if these diagrams, pictures, images are so helpful and essential for doing this work, the question is, why are we doing that with office tools like Visio or PowerPoint or even paper-based, and then we spend time in translating the pictures in our IT toolset? So this is the basic idea behind the KubeEYE project. But before I come into detail, I show you some slide, or one slide, to show you what we have in mind. Please don't take it too serious. I hope you all know Jordi LaForge, the chief engineer of the Enterprise in Star Trek Next Generation. I don't know very much about the computers in a Starship of the Galaxy class, but I'm pretty sure that there is a bit of complexity in it. And Jordi just had this diagram, this one diagram of the ship on his screen. If some aliens or space anomalies made damage to the decks 7, 9, and 18, then there were the decks 7, 9, and 18 blinking red on his screen, and he solved the problems with just clicking into the diagram. So if Jordi just had a list of server nodes with issues telling him something like the number of running pods is not in a desired state, Star Trek The Next Generation wouldn't have been ended, or would have been ended after only a few episodes with a big fireball. So just to avoid misunderstandings, I know Jordi was born blind. We are not working on a visor. That's an invention other people have to work on. We work on visual representations of complex IT landscapes. And now I come to the basic architecture or the conceptual design of the KubeEYE application. We work on a visual designer UI for which people can use to create landscape diagrams in a comfortable way, meaning they can do drag and drop of virtual IT components. These virtual IT components is an abstract term for some things I will show you in a demonstration later. Basically, virtual IT components have references to Docker images in a Docker repository, which is not part of the KubeEYE application. It's just referencing to an external Docker repository like Docker Hub. Basically, the people who use the visual designer are then drag and drop their virtual components into the diagram. We have a collaboration layer called the Landscape Project Manager, where many people can work together on a diagram. It's also responsible for the persisting of the landscape information. And behind that, there is the deployment processor, which converts the diagrams into deploy commands and sends them to the Kubernetes cluster via its API. And finally, Kubernetes loads now the Docker images referenced by the virtual components from the repository to build up the landscape, which was drawn in the diagram. Based on that concept, we build up a prototype. This contains mainly a Java web application running in a Tomcat container. This is a standard setup, which makes it easy to ship KubeEYE itself as a Docker image. And so you can run KubeEYE within the Kubernetes cluster itself. It is also good to have it as a web application, because then people can just use their standard browsers for drawing their diagrams. The application works with all modern browsers. There is no favorite browser. We choose the Vardin UI framework. I don't know if it's if you know it, but it gave us the possibility to create the complex landscape designer also in Java, even if it's running in the web browsers of the users on client side. So this was just a pragmatical decision that we did. Also, a very pragmatical decision was to use an Apache Derby database. This was just a decision because we were familiar to it and used it in other projects. but there's no hard dependency to the database type. Could be another one in future versions. For the connection with Kubernetes, we integrated the Fabric 8 Java API in our prototype. It may also be subject to change because we are facing some issues, but on a prototype level, it works very good. And yeah, now I think we have seen enough on the slides. I will now change to the demonstration of our prototype. Before we start, just some words. I have all I need on my notebook here. I installed Minikube here as Kubernetes cluster. And within this Minikube, I have, as you can see, these two services besides the Kubernetes standard service. It's mainly the KubeEYE application itself. As I said, it runs in a standard Tomcat container. And in addition, I have another image which contains the Derby database. I show you this because we come back later here after after some steps in my demonstration. I will go to my web browser. I'm using a Firefox, but as I said, all other modern browsers are also provided or supported. And now I start, you see the start screen of the KubeEYE application. I'm just logging in now. Basically, you see our prototype is available in two languages, German and English. I log in and coming into the workspace screen. Yes, just to give you an overview about everything which concerns the user administration. The KubeEYE application concept sees the whole company as the target group. So I just have to put away the Zoom bar here to show everything. I'm now logged in at the company administrator, so I see this button on the right upper corner, the company admin button. The company admin has the rights to create additional users. You see at the moment there's only one user here. I can just add another one. And so he can add as many users as he wants. And there is also a substructure below the company. We call it organizations. It can be project teams or departments in the company or whatever. Basically, there is already one organization called My Projects. And in every organization, we can have an organization admin or several organization admins who are responsible for the user rights within this organization. So I can make the new user Daniel now a member, but he should not be org admin. And there's also the possibility to make users read only. Then they can see the content that is produced within the organization, but cannot change anything. Going back to workspace. And now I'm entering the organization, My Projects. Now I am in the projects overview. There is no project at the moment, so I will create the first project. Call it Meetup Demo and save it. Yeah, you can see here I can change the visibility. The default value is private, so only the user who creates the project can see it, but he can now share it with his organization or even with the whole company. And now I'm coming to the core screen of the KubeEYE application. It's the drawing area. You see on the left side a tree of components which can be dropped into the middle part here. And see, every component has some fields here where you can enter context values. Let's say this server is tomcat-A, and John is responsible. And in this, well, let's just add an IP here. I can also put some information about the installed software here. I can add lines, let's say Windows or something like that. Even, oh, not good here. Should not save the button. Just forget one important step, because the first thing that I had to do is to enter the API to the Kubernetes cluster. In my case, it's very easy because the Tomcat of KubeEYE is running within the Kubernetes cluster, so I can just use the default URL here. And then it should not be a problem to save it. So I can now also copy this server. Let's say this is Tomcat-B. There's another IP. Yes. Let's do the same with these databases. So copied, and I can also just to double click here. I can also change the names here and write some description here. So this is now displayed in a diagram. Just to make it a little more complex, I can also add other components here. Let's say there is a firewall between the servers and the user from out there. And then I also can do some, yeah, let's choose technical connections between users and these components. You see, even the technical connections, which are just lines and diagrams, can have some context information which can be entered here. I just complete the image. Maybe angled lines look better here, so I can just, oops, find the right point. Yeah, let's edit here, and you see every component has its own context fields where you can enter something for documentation. You can even document your firewall activations here without leaving the picture. It's very comfortable to do it right here without jumping from one tool into another tool. Yes, to show you the other things, there are also possibility to make here some shapes. Let's say this is that you can better see the firewall. Make it red. And you can enter also text. So this is the internal side, and this is the external side. So that's left. Yeah, nice feature is also to group components together. Then I can bring some components together. I can move them together. I can also add context information to groups. So this is my database group. And groups are also able to get collapsed. So if you have information which is not necessary at the moment, you can just hide it and bring it back very easily. So now I save it. All the time when I do changes, it looks a bit long at the moment. Okay, there it's back. The KubeEYE application is made for collaborating within the KubeEYE application, but if you have to send a picture of the diagram, you can also download it here. It's now PNG. You can also use some of the print functions. I will not go into the details right now. You have some possibilities to create PDF documents with all diagram and all the information you added into the context fields. Then there is an interesting feature if you want to change perspectives of the IT landscape. You can just play with the functions here in the header bar. For example, if at the moment the diagram shows the names of the components that I entered, but it's also the possibility to show the IP addresses that I entered. They are appearing here right now. I didn't enter IP addresses for the databases. Or maybe you want to know who's responsible for this component, then you see here John is responsible. And so you have the chance to show the information which is relevant for the respective user. You can also use this feature here just to show or hide all annoying information. Yeah, now I'm showing nothing, or at least I show now the names. I think that's the most important features from the diagram area. I just want to add one more feature. The KubeEYE application integrates the small task management functionality. For every component, you can enter tasks. Here, let's say for my server, I can create a task. Software update required. Can change priority, add some description. You can also assign this task to other people. Let's say Daniel should do this task. And save it. We can also do this to another component here. Choosing database right now. Oops. Can also add a task here. Let's also assign it to Daniel. And even if I don't choose a component, I can also add general tasks to the project. You see now in the diagram the symbols showing that there are open tasks at the moment. And I just go back for a short time to the project overview. Oh, I hope I had saved now the tasks. There is another button here where I can enter the task here. I didn't save the tasks. I just saved only the first task, so it's only one line here. But this is the screen intended to show all the tasks that are opened for this project. And if I have, let me just jump into the workspace. There is also an area for my tasks. There I see only the tasks that are personally assigned to me and my user. Now the only task is assigned to Daniel, so my user called admin is not having any tasks, so I don't see anything here. Let's go back to the tasks area of this project. What's very nice here is I now have the context of the object of the task, and if I'm not really sure what is Tomcat-A doing and what are things that depend on a running server here, I can just click here and it jumps now directly into the diagram, highlights the server or the component which has this task, and then I can see if I made a good diagram, which are the dependencies of this server and who is relying on this server. So I have a better overview about the things that I'm doing. Okay, so I think I gave you an overview about all, or most of all features of the landscape designer, but of course the main part is now what happened behind the scenes. So you saw the first objects I took from this Kubernetes node in the tree. There was these two Tomcat components and these two database components. And what happened now when saving this picture is I go back to my my Minikube. And now if I look at the list of services in my Kubernetes, there were these 4 new services created. If I go into details of the first server, I think then you can see this was created by KubeEYE. This is the object ID and the project ID. You see this was this server. He has the object ID 1 and this service was now created. Why was it created? Because it's a Kubernetes component and all these Kubernetes components have this Kubernetes specification, which are some basic parameters that I use to deploy the source, to deploy the commands to the Kubernetes. Basically, this server nodes are referencing a Tomcat image on Docker Hub. And I can now also change the number of replica here, and to make this Tomcat also visible outside of my Kubernetes cluster, I could also add here a node port, let's say this one. So if I now save again, this change is transmitted to the Kubernetes cluster. If you have a better machine, it takes not so much time. But with my Minikube on my notebook, I have to wait a bit. Now it's finished. If I now show you what is deployed on my Minikube, you see I changed the replica for the first server of from 1 to 2, and you see there are now 2 pods running here. And I also changed the port, the node port. So problem with the zoom bar here. But now I can see also this Tomcat, which was deployed in the Kubernetes running here. Takes a bit time, but it's loading. And now we should see the Tomcat standard page, which is available under port 8080 in this standard image that was chosen here in the Kubernetes specification area. This image was now deployed, and yeah, it takes some time here. Okay. You see the standard page of the Tomcat. So I can control everything out of my diagram here. And it's directly deployed to my Minikube. So one last feature that I want to show you, it's just a problem that we usually have in a Kubernetes cluster. How, for example, do these Tomcat servers know the connection parameters of the databases here? For that reason, you can also use config map. Let's call it my config. And for these config maps, you can add properties which are just name value pairs. Let's say database connection error, second one. So now I save this. What happens then is that this config map is created in the Kubernetes, but that's not enough. I can also now assign it to, let's say, this Tomcat, or also this other Tomcat, just by putting these lines into, these assign lines into the diagram. You see now the config map is connected to the application server. And saving again will deploy this information to the Kubernetes. Okay. Now it should be there. Yeah, just to show you config map that was created. It's this one. You see within this config map, there are the parameters that we created in the diagram here, the database connection, and the second one. And if we now have a deeper look on the deployment of the server, you will see that this config map was also assigned to this container. You see it now uses environment variables from this config map. So these two parameters that we created are now available within this pod. Yes, I think that was enough for a demonstration. My time is also running away, and I go back to show you some final slides. Everything you saw in this demonstration is available on KubeEYE.com. We put a quick start package there with an installer guide, and everything you need to do your own tests with KubeEYE, let's say within 15 minutes. There is a zip file including everything you need, including the references to the images on Docker Hub. And if you want to have a look in the at Docker Hub, you have you find it also there. I think would be very nice to have some feedback. If you want to download it and test it, tell us what it's good or what it's bad, or if you just like to get informed about other releases in the future or new features or a roadmap, or if you just want to tell us that everything we do is crap, you can also do this. Just write a mail to mail@kubeeye.com. We'll be very happy to get in touch with you and hear your thoughts about the things we are doing here. Yes, that was my program for today. Thanks everybody for listening, and thanks to the organization. So I think I should now have a look into the chat. So I see a question: are we here to see how to edit, polish, design form? Don't really understand the question here. What we have, what I showed is that we have some, let's say, default Kubernetes components which are shipped in this prototype. We want to add some more, and on our roadmap is also to add an editor that everybody can edit own components with own parameters and own standard image references that they can be used in the diagram. Not sure, is this answering the question?
I think the person who asked that question already left the meetup. So
okay.
I think you won't get an answer, but I would just stop recording for now.